Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy. In today's Fairmont episode, we will be moving the battery from the engine compartment into the trunk because we're awesome. Now really there's two main reasons we're doing this. Number one reason is because the stock battery location is now going to be taken up by a turbo, so we're not going to have room for it there. The other reason is weight transfer. If you take the weight of the battery out of the engine compartment and move it back behind the rear axle, you actually help with weight transfer when you take off from a dead stop. And it's cool. We're doing this. Anyway, I have this kit before me on the table. It comes with the battery box here. Comes with some extra length positive cable. Now we don't need as much ground cable, and I'll show you why when we get there. We also have some tie downs here, some other hardware, things to go with it. I'm supplying some cable ties so I can tie down the positive battery cable along with some fasteners for that. But all this stuff comes in a kit. I'm going to put a link in the description to that so you can check it out for yourself. One more thing. I believe in this application I'm going to have to drop the fuel tank in order to fasten some of these things down. So you may be faced with that. Luckily my fuel is almost out, so it shouldn't be that heavy. But if you're faced with a similar thing, try to empty out your fuel tank before you get started. I'm going to start by getting inside the trunk. It's cavernous, and this was considered a small trunk back in the day. I'm going to first start by positioning where I want this to go, and I've debated for a while on what I'm going to do about the carpet. Am I going to cut around? Am I going to go through it? And honestly, I think the best way to do this is to cut around it. So I'm going to move it over for now. They don't encourage you to mount the batteries inside the spare tire well, especially if you have a fuel tank underneath it. They're concerned about drilling into that. That's a valid concern. But not only do you have to be concerned about, where you're positioning it in here, but also be aware of these hinges because they come down when you close the trunk. So if I had moved this further back like this, it can actually come into contact. So be very aware of those hinges when you go to locate it. So I'm going to pull it forward enough to where that hinge is not going to be an issue. Yeah, I'll miss it entirely. But as I said, watch out for fuel tanks because guess what's right underneath where I'm putting this battery box. So therefore, I am going to have to drop the fuel tank if I'm going to put the fasteners in, because the fasteners are going to go in here and here. And they're going to hold everything down. They're going to hold the battery box in place, and it's also going to hold the battery itself down. Next thing, these are the outs for the cable and the vent. So you're going to need the vent, and the in and outs for the cable are also important. If I wanted to route them this way, which I don't, I would position it like that. Instead, I'm routing these this way so that when my cables come out, I'm going to try to go in through the side here. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So the cables come down and through here, and I'll connect them onto the side. It's nice they did that so you can keep it pretty. I suppose for starters, this is all we're going to need. You can use this as a template. I checked the instructions. These are 3/8 holes they want to drill. Okay, I've installed the cover and I'm just checking its clearance with the cover now. Still fine. But I just wanted to make sure that it also worked with the cover. For now, I have its placement. I know where I want it to go, which is roughly here. I had it moved up further, but I was on this seam. This seems like a really good, happy place. But as I said, the fuel tank's directly underneath here. I'm not going to be able to, especially this hole, do that with the fuel tank in the way. So our next step is going to be to drop the fuel tank out. Before I get too far, I'm going to mark my happy place. At some point, I'm also going to have to try and figure out what part of the carpet that I'm going to cut around the outside of this. So I'll need to figure that as well. In fact, I might even be able to do that now. Taking the carpet and I've laid it down over the top of my battery box. Just sort of draw the line. I'm trying to go on the inside. That way I've got just a little bit left over. But that should give me a good starting point anyway. That way I can still have my carpet in here and it still looks good. and it'll just sort of live around the battery box. I'm just going to cut the padding and the carpet. Needs a little bit of adjustment. Need to cut just a little bit more off, but I'd rather be in this situation than having cut too much. Made some new marks. And truth be told, this sound deadening material right here may go away. I'm thinking about getting some to install in the interior, some new stuff, so I may line the trunk with that also. And if I do, I'll just have this other material. That's better. I'll go get a utility knife, see if I can speed this up. You were supposed to speed things up, utility knife, not make things harder. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Looks like it was born there. With the fuel tank removed, I am now free and clear to drill some holes into the trunk. That's covered in a separate video, by the way. I just emptied the contents of this bag, which is all the extras. So we have 2 nuts to go down underneath. We have 2 nuts to hold this tray in place. We have 2 more to hold the battery down, and we have 2 to hold the top cover on. And these are the long threaded rods that are gonna be going all the way through here. And we'll likely have to cut them. They seem a bit long. And now we drill. I'm gonna start with a small hole, and then I'll work my way up to that larger size. Nope, straight through. That's good. I was worried that that might go into the frame rail. Very happy to find out that it's not. Two holes. These rods can pass through. Now that we have holes drilled, let's put the rods through. But this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take one of these nuts. Yeah, I know, these nuts. Take one of these, put it on the end of the rod like that. And I can drop it down through. The same with this other one. Grab 2 of these and a couple of washers, and we'll go underneath. Now that we're under here, a washer and a nut. I'm gonna leave just a couple of threads hanging down. I don't need a lot, especially up above this fuel tank. I don't want this sticking down so far that it comes into contact with the top of the tank. If it does, well, that could cause a problem. So I'm gonna try to leave that one about as flush as I can make it. And now we lower it down again. Now that we're topside, you'll notice these are sticking up way too far. So we're gonna have to shorten them. So I'm gonna fasten both of these down in the, that's pretty cool. We'll just let that finish. In the up position, figure out how much we need, mark them, cut them, and then I'm gonna insert them back in. Yeah, it's gonna take a minute. All done. I'm gonna install this part of the box next, and since it's detached right now, I'm going to attach it. The nuts are 3/8, in case you're wondering. Now I'll install it in the tray. Next, the top cover. I'm very glad I was able to clear that. Just to have it, just gonna put this down on there just to find out where it sits, so I know exactly how much to cut off. But this is gonna be what it looks like when it's finished. Hey Eric, what's that big silver box in your trunk? Don't open it. Scary stuff inside. Right then, I want to go just a little bit above. Like just by a couple threads. I don't want to do it totally flush, but we definitely don't want to leave it like this. Now I could sit here for like an hour and unthread these out the top, or I could just go down underneath and undo the nuts under there. What do you think I'm gonna do? I don't want to mess up these threads in the vise, so I don't want to crimp it too tightly. Just want to secure it, or else I'll be wrenching the nut all the way down. I don't mind cutting it a little long because I can always make the adjustment down below, so think about that. I'm keeping these around. They might come in handy. I'm going to take the time and round off this burr because it's going to make it so it's very difficult to install the nut. I'm also going to sort of round the tip like this end so it's easier to install. Same process as before, but as I said, I want the easy side up here. And now, the million thread march. I'm going to check the fitment one more time before I fully commit, because if I need to do an adjustment, now would be the time. Well, I can say I'm very happy with that. No adjustment necessary. Now that I know it's where I want it to be, I'll tighten this down. Now that I have the lower part of the tray installed, I'm going to take my grommets, pop these into place. I'm also going to take my vent tube, wherever that went, and there's a washer that goes on the outside, run it through here, washer that goes on the inside, and finally this nut, which we can just run down finger tight. I'm gonna go get some pliers so I can hold that. Now my vent is routed. I went and got the battery, put it in here, sort of mock things up. By the way, this is a hold down for that battery, so that second set of nuts are gonna go down in here to hold the battery in place. Now I need to figure out my cable routing, and this is the negative cable. It's not nearly as long because it just needs to be connected to the frame. I'm chosen to put the negative cable in the back here. And I know that's kind of opposite the way my battery is, but so what? It gives me more length over here for the positive cable because that's got to be run all the way to the engine compartment. So I'm going to take the ground cable, slip it through this grommet. And that'll live there nicely. Now this is a body ground, and they just put this on here. Since I'm attaching this cable to the body, I'm using the entire body as a ground anyway, so this would be redundant. This is normally placed up front with the battery. I think they just put this cable in the kit for what it was, but I like that it can live there, and I'll probably get some extra cable out of here so that I have excess inside the battery compartment. If I put a different battery in someday, I might need a little more cable length. But I've come up with what I feel is kind of an ingenious way of dealing with not only the ground cable but also the vent. You'll notice right in here is where the gas filler neck passes through, and it's rubber, and it's a hole that's already existing. So I can just go right through there, and since it's rubber, it'll share with the filler neck just fine. Additionally, I think I can also take the vent and put it through that same hole, and that takes care of the vent and the negative cable without drilling any holes. The positive cable needs to run from the battery all the way into the engine compartment. You can run this along the underbody of the car, but they actually recommend, and I am going to run it along the inside of the car. Right up there is the back seat. I can slip in behind the back seat up there, run it through the vehicle interior into the engine compartment. Let me show you where I'm going to end up. So I'll be coming from the back seat through the interior, right along this inner rocker, up towards underneath the HVAC, right there. From there, there's already this grommet with this pass-through for this wire harness that I can come up through, up over to the solenoid, because this in essence is what I'm replacing, so this cable. So all I need to do is run it up here to connect here on this solenoid, and I will have powered the vehicle. I'm going to be removing the entire interior from this car, well actually after I get finished doing this. Therefore, I'm not going to bother routing the cable under the carpet and everything, because I'll be tearing that out in an episode very soon and rewiring the entire car. Therefore, I'm just going to go through to the back seat with the power cable, and we'll get there. We don't even have an engine to start yet, but at least you know how to install the battery box and what you're up against. Also, we need to connect the ground cable to the frame rail underneath, so we'll be doing that also. Now, if you're wondering if this cable is long enough, this is how far I have to go. When it comes time to attach this end, you cut it to fit after you get the length and everything sorted out, and this is the battery terminal that they've supplied. I'm going to be honest, I hate these battery terminals. I'm going to get a better one when I install this onto my vehicle, but they do supply you with one that is adequate. I'm just checking to see if I can get the filler neck back down through here after everything gets installed. It's a little cumbersome, but it'll work. Super important that this ground gets connected and that it's clean and secure. I have in my hand my solution for that. I have a bolt, 2 nuts, and a lock washer. And this is what I'm going to use to secure this to the frame. And I dare not call it that because this is actually unibody, so it's not technically a frame, but we'll call this a support. So the plan is to drill a hole right next to this existing hole that's coming down right by where this comes out, right here. And I plan to attach the ground there with this bolt. Now, I'm going to drill a hole here, run the bolt down through this way, and take one of the nuts and run it down onto here with the lock washer, lock it to the support. Then I'm going to take another nut and put that in between and use that to secure the ground connection. So in other words, I'll be able to connect and disconnect this ground at will And this will sort of be like a negative battery post sticking up off the bottom here. I'm gonna start by drilling this hole. Doesn't need to be precise. This will work better if I drill a pilot hole first. Perfect. My hope is that I could fish this up into here, probably with a pair of needle nose pliers, and drop that down through. But before I do, this connection needs to be clean and correct. To that end, I'm going to clean this down to bare metal before I insert the fastener. I'm going to try to carefully fish this bolt down into this hole. You know what? I got another idea that might be helpful here. I have a magnet. Oops. Sweet. Lock washer. I'm going to turn this nut around backwards. If I really wanted to get fancy, what I could do is bust out my welder and tack that down into place. I think this will be fine now. However, if it does ever work its way loose, I know what I'm doing next. Oh, looks like there's enough of this sticking down to where I'm going to need a couple more washers to take up some space. That's okay. I'm going to grab a stack of those and I'll be back. Found a stack of washers, lock washers on the bottom. That isn't going anywhere. Now for the cable connection. I want to make sure that I route this away from the filler neck. Awesome. And what I really like is I can come up underneath here and undo it and redo it and connect other stuff to it if I want to connect other stuff to it directly. It's a very happy thing. So this is the final setup with the fuel tank installed. I had to move the ground cable around just a little bit, but I think it's much better this way. And it's also on the back side, so as debris and things get thrown up by the tire, it doesn't go into the tubes or up inside the trunk, it stays outside. A few finishing touches on the battery tray. I think they designed this so that it was actually flipped around so that this side makes contact with the top of the battery, but I don't like these two long rails doing that. So I grabbed a couple of washers that fit, slid them down on there, and the battery is secure in its mount. The only thing left to do is run that positive battery cable, and we already talked about that. But aside from doing that, we're finished. All right, well, I know the installation isn't 100% complete, but the bullet points are most certainly covered. It's going to vary by application as far as where you're going to install it, how much cable you're going to run, where you need to run the cable to. But for now, I know I'm going to be going back in to remove the interior from this vehicle. It'll be much easier to route the cable at that time. So, to be continued. But all the bullet points were covered. One of the main ones being the connection of that ground cable, where you route things. And if you do decide to go through metal instead of through the fill tube like I did here, what I would suggest you do is put little rubber grommets on the inside of that metal so that there isn't any chafing that can occur that could rub the insulation off any of the wires, which could cause a problem. Anyhow, if you have additional questions, I ask that you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. I'll put a link in the description to make that super easy. I will also put a link in the description to the products and tools and things that I used here to make it easy for you as well. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram if you wish to connect with me socially. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.